Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Bender from Momentum Events. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here for today's session. Before I turn things over to the presenters, just a few words of note. This session is being recorded. Everyone on the call will automatically receive an email from us containing a link to the recording that you can review or share with colleagues. The presenters have agreed to make a copy of the slides available. I will include that contact details in the email as well. You'll get that in the next day or so. Finally, the presenters will be conducting Q&A at the conclusion of their session. To pose any questions to the panelists, please use the question panel, which you should see to the right-hand side of your screen. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Julie Fleischer, VP of Product Marketing at Neustar, and Chris Hawk, Connections Investment Performance at Coca-Cola, for today's webinar entitled, Get the Most from Your First-Party Data, How Coca-Cola Manages, Measures, and Maximizes Their Marketing. Now over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Lauren. So, hi everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending upon where you are. Thank you for joining us today. I am Julie Fleischer. I'm Head of Product Marketing for Marketing Solutions at Neustar, and I am really pleased to be here this afternoon with Chris Hawk, who leads Connections Investment Performance at Coca-Cola. He is one of our most progressive, most thoughtful and curious clients, and I think he's got a really, really interesting perspective to share on how Coke markets with data, the future of marketing with data at the core, and some really interesting things that he's been leading at Coca-Cola. So I'm going to start by just asking Chris if you can introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do at Coca-Cola North America.
Thank you so much for such a glowing intro, Julie. So, as was mentioned, I'm in Connections Investment Performance at the Coca-Cola Company, and this team is all about assessing the best way to talk to a consumer about the right product or products within our portfolio for their need state. We support that process from understanding who the consumer is, how to engage them, through which conduit, and ultimately how we assess whether or not we are successful in our work.
And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today? I think it's always really interesting for people to hear sort of the career arc or trajectory of what we went through to get to the point that you are in your career and at Coca-Cola.
Oh, for sure. So I fell into this industry completely by accident. So I was working at Time Inc., pulling inventory availability and then projecting ad inventory for their websites. And one day, my boss comes to me and says we've been asked to take on this thing called remnant advertising that nobody else wanted to do. And overnight, I'm learning about the inner working of ad networks, this brand new thing at the time called real-time bidding. People are like, hey, there's this thing called a private marketplace. There's these trading desks popping up. All these crazy things. I had no clue they even existed. And I followed that to working at Rubicon Project, even getting deeper into how those worlds work, and focusing on programmatic activation for Procter & Gamble at Starcom for a time. And as I progressed from sell side to buy side, I became fixated on learning the motivations for why brands were putting their dollars into this ecosystem and what they really valued. Then I landed a dream job at Coca-Cola doing just that, connecting consumers to products that they do or will, once they know about them, love.
So you've worked, if I've gotten this right, you've worked on the publisher side, you worked on the technology side, you worked on the media agency side, and now on the brand side. You've seen everything.
I have seen everything, for better and for worse.
So tell us a little bit about the portfolio that you're responsible for.
Absolutely. So when you think of the Coca-Cola Company, it's so much more than the iconic flagship product. We're talking water, tea, juice, kombucha, milk, coffee, drinking vinegar, even more, right? You see 800 beverages floating up on your screen here. That's in the US alone that we outright own or we co-own. The amount of stuff we are into is mind-boggling. Whether we're focused on how to scale smart water, whether we're introducing low-calorie options like Coke Life, partnering with a brand like Dunkin' to distribute the ready-to-drink coffee, investing in recovery drinks like Body Armor, if you've seen the news, right? There are a host of opportunities for the application of data, and it's a true data nerd dream.
Excellent job using the new Dunkin' brand, by the way, there too. Very well done.
Yeah.
So, marketing's come a long way since you got started. Tell me about some of those changes and how you view your role today and what excites you about it.
Yeah, so from what I can see of what's at least recorded on the internet, people agree that real-time bidding was created around 2009, and you see this explosion of data-driven marketing around that. And if that's true, we're talking about a form of media buying that's younger than the iPhone, but managed to take a dominant share of digital budgets. And plus, it's growing into traditional channels with over-the-top connected TV, eating into the linear world. Digital out-of-home is growing, streaming audio, right? Like it's all-encompassing. And the consolidation and transparency efforts that go along with this rapid expansion, honestly, they really excite me. The ability to strategically create a foundation to support our brands and customers while learning about what consumers truly care about makes every day fresh. The signals that inform what we buy for which brand and if that ad mattered never gets routine. And an example that's dear to my heart about all of this is how we introduce pack format into our content, into our marketing strategy. There are a lot of people who may like Coke, the iconic flagship, right? But they want a smaller serving. They don't want a 12-pack, right? Maybe they're big into craft cocktails and want to use it as a mixer. Either way, whatever their goal use of the product is, we should be showing them that we have mini cans available. Maybe they're very much on the go. They want something resealable that can stay cold longer. And again, they want to control the portion size. So we have aluminum bottles that stay cool and are resealable, travel along with you. Maybe you're going to host a holiday party, a birthday party, any sort of gathering. And rather than a large liter bottle on your kitchen table or in the foyer, wherever you host people, right? We can offer up our glass bottles that are as much decoration as they are product. And regardless, right, it opens up a new occasion for buying our beverages and keeps people who don't want, again, those tonnage pack sizes to stay and continue to buy within our sparkling business, our sparkling portfolio. We've been playing with the idea of pack format with Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, Fanta, et cetera, a bunch of brands across the portfolio, because what we have to realize and what we are doing every day is saying that we need to create product and put product in people's hands that fits what they care about and what they want. We shouldn't be expecting people to buy what we're used to selling traditionally, again, the sort of tonnage type products.
So that's a great example. And so what you talked about signal, you talked about transparency to really understand what consumers care about, and then you're matching that to the pack format that you're marketing for them. And clearly, that's all enabled by data. Data is at the center of what you're doing and what you talked about. Given what's going on with GDPR, the upcoming California legislation, some of the things that, we've been tracking over the past 8 months or so with Facebook, does that give you pause about the way you're going to market now? And do you feel like there's a future for what we're doing here, or, is it under fire?
Yeah, so I'm going to get specifically to your question in 2 seconds. I just want to start off by saying the Coca-Cola company takes consumer privacy very, very seriously. End to end, we clearly label every single engagement, every promotion, everything with what data is captured, how it can be used, how you can opt out of communications, right? And I would say that every brand, regardless of what laws are in your country, should remember what it is to be human and treat that information with the utmost respect. And again, in terms of your actual question, so my personal opinion is that 100% consumers need protection to avoid bad actors from harming their credit or their reputation or doing things that tarnish their brand if you're a company. I just hope that major players in our industry get to help craft some of the finer points of legislation so that simple things like the fact no consumer likes Powerade, therefore we offer a relevant promotion doesn't become illegal. Data about preferences for purchase, what media channels the consumer prefers, that helps us and other brands be better about the relevance of the advertising we put out there. The number of times that we put an ad in front of a consumer, right? That's data, that's consumer exposure, right? It's being thoughtful and providing a better media experience. To some degree, there's going to be a change, and it will impact how you can use a tool, potentially knock a few things out of business product-wise, right? But I think the automation and personalization train has way too much speed to stop outright. So you'll find a quality balance when all this gets said and done.
Yeah, I think that's a really nuanced and thoughtful look at it. So thank you for that. And I like what you talked about, Chris, about bringing humanity into it, recognizing that we're all human and there's some responsibility around the shepherding and the governance of the use of data. And I think you've done a nice job of painting the picture of what thoughtful use of data is and how it really, provides a benefit. So let's now talk a little bit about data and Coke. You're a CPG company, so you're not selling a lot of your products directly. They go through retailers, they go through restaurants, they go through movie theaters. Do you even know who your customers are? What kind of data do you have?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So truthfully, we have a pretty sizable reach with our first-party data for a CPG. I stress for a CPG. But you're right. The downside of being a CPG is we don't have a large D2C business. Shameless plug for CokeStore.com and for our app. Find it in the App Store. It enables sip and scan, freestyle pours, a lot of great stuff, things that you will actually like and enjoy if you go after it. But yeah, it's hard for us to have a direct purchase type set of behavior that helps us measure everything we do. Where our first-party data really comes to light and helps us be a smarter organization is the fact it helps us better understand the need states of a consumer by telling us how those people engage in promotions between us and a retailer, convenience, retail, food service, quick service, restaurant, movie theaters, right? All these places that we partner very deeply with. And it gives us real-world examples to cross-reference against our market research. So with all of these things combined, we can understand a heck of a lot about drinking occasions people have, and then we can better surface which product or products may meet those need states at those times, so that, again, we're talking about having 800 products. If you just throw everything at everybody, it's noise. We're using this to drive relevance of what products, to whom, and when, so that it breaks through the clutter.
And you said something interesting there. You talked about these partnerships that you have with retailers and food service. Are you able to partner with them around some sort of data sharing?
Yeah, so our company is always talking to our customers and partners about data sharing opportunities. There's great value in us sharing what we know with a food service vendor, for example, to inform the best possible strategy for a co-marketing campaign, potentially increasing foot traffic at some limited time event for that chain, right? It makes sense for us to talk to our retail partners about how we prove lift or incrementality. I can go on for days, but overall, partnership with our key customers, partners, vendors, it's a huge component of how we operate, because otherwise we're running blind. And another major component of our work is what we do with Neustar. So we bring all of these assets that we've talked about from our data into the Element One platform to act as a link between the research we've done with our first-party data, the devices associated with the consumers we truly want to reach, and other sorts of assets that we can use to combine, validate, amend, and adequately size our opportunities. And then from commingling that data, from having the insights, from being smarter about the targeting and where to talk to, and so what conduits to put those messages to consumers through, we can then go back and, again, talk to our valued partners, whether it's retail or food service or whatever else, to see if we can showcase whether or not those messages drove the action we intended to drive. And even if you have a failure, if you know it was a failure, you find a way not to do it again.
Right. So what is it that you want? What is it that you want to do with that data? What is your vision for data-driven marketing at Coke?
Yeah. So the big thing I tease at the end there, right? I want to validate our assumptions wherever possible and understand where the nuance is. Every one of our brands has a target consumer group with a number of, so a target consumer group meaning like a recruitment target, right? With a number of consumer groups that are actively purchasing. Some of them are that recruitment target, some of them are not. And I want to help us balance retaining those current buyers with recruiting new ones. You know, I want to give our customers who are declining in one product category or type an offering to try a beverage in the area they're migrating to. So if we know through our partnerships, a given consumer or household or segment is declining in, let's just say Sprite, but they're starting to buy a lot more in the water category, I probably want them to understand that we have smart water out there for them. And I want to know what kind of content actually matters to them, where I should be talking to them, where I'm going to get that engagement. And then again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, tease the end of the last part of our content, working with our partners to understand if the messages we have in market are resonating and driving sales or causing people to take action, that's Shangri-La. That's where we need to get to.
And that's really, Chris, as you talk about it, it's really interesting because that's sort of an advanced use case to think about the life cycle of a consumer through the whole breadth of your portfolio and not just within each individual brand. That's a really, I think, advanced use case for how do we use data to understand our customers and make sure that we're serving them with the right product, the right format, the right brand, the right experience throughout their life cycle. So, you know, looking so broadly at what you do and the kinds of things that you control, how do you define success and how do you measure it?
Yeah, so success is meeting your core objectives in each phase. So there are media standards that protect your brand, your integrity. There are campaign objectives that are very specific to the way you're activating your media. And then there's the actual consumer impact, right? The fact that did all these things you do cause an action to be taken. From the media standards point of view, it's did the content we deliver get seen by a person? Was it a bot, right? Good bot or bad bot, doesn't matter, it's still a bot. Was I in a brand safe environment? Did I avoid flat out fraud? From these things that don't necessarily guarantee someone's going to take an action, but when carefully approached and consistently managed, make the quality of the meat put in the market work that much harder for you, right? From a campaign objective point of view, we're trying to drive the most efficient reach within each of our targets, right? And so again, we have a limited D2C business. So our goal is to tell that story to those most likely to appreciate it and take action against that story based off all the things that we know. So the ability to saturate that audience and ensuring it's a relevant audience, that's key, right? And when I say audience saturation, I'm making this up, but let's say we have a product that we think has 1 million consumers who are willing to buy it, right? If I have a very efficient buy against talking to 10,000 of those consumers, like 3 times a day for 6 weeks, all 10,000 might buy it. That may be cool. I'm missing out on so much more, right? When we can actually see the size of the prize, a big thing we need to do is ensure we actually talk to all of those people. And quick tangent, right? One of the things that always bothers me is when people talk about precision marketing as talking to 5 people. Look up the definition of precision. It just means being specific, right? So if you have a product or a service that everybody in the US wants, trimming the fat off of who you talk to is actually a great use of your time and will make your media work that much higher or that much better. And again, the idea of audience saturation, of getting the most exposure to those people, so key. From a consumer impact point of view, the last piece of it, right, is I need to know how our content affected the perception of the brand. I need to know if that perception drove intent and ultimately purchase. And we have vendors that help us support those media standard KPIs, and Neustar is a key player in our campaign objective approach, helping us curate those audiences and drive quality reach at the most efficient cost. And that third bucket, at this juncture, is primarily driven from media mix modeling, but we talked about the idea of this data sharing world, and as more of those things happen, we get quicker reads on how the impact of all this work came to be.
Got it. So that's really helpful to understand what your, lens is for KPIs and for success. Let's dive a layer deeper now. So, obviously within Coke, you serve the world. There's so many things that you have that are opportunities, whether it's across your brand portfolio, looking at different package formats or fountain, you've got different geographies, you've got different kinds of retail outlets. How do you approach customer intelligence with all of those different sort of alternative views that you could use? And what are the critical ones to drive your business?
Yeah, so we have amazing consumer research teams who do great work to frame up the opportunity for each of our brands, what those consumers really care about, et cetera. And then my group comes in to try to bridge that research with actual consumer behavior through a variety of means, including what we do with Neustar, including our first-party data, all the stuff we talked about, and just go right into an example. One of the ways that we've brought this to life is by leveraging our first-party data and Neustar's Element 1 consumer profiling and mapping tool to recreate a food service customer's recruitment target, right? So we understood who they were trying to reach, who they were talking to actively, and we bumped that up against the physical locations that customer had in 2 high-priority DMAs. So right off the bat, we found that one of their DMAs, they were seeing monster success because of the proximity to their core target, right? So it's logical. You have a physical store location around all the right people that you're sending the right offers to. It's the whole idea of right person, right place, right time, right? No wonder it's going gangbusters. Now, the other DMA had a very different consumer base in the sort of standard drive time radius around these locations. And so that message resonating in place A really wasn't resonating that well in place B. So we did a deep dive in terms of everything we knew about our work with that consumer and consumers in those areas. And we were able to tease out how to optimize what was being said to the people in that underperforming DMA, right? So we were able to help them understand how to optimize that promotional content, which they chose to run through a mobile geolocation targeting service, specifically who they were delivering it to, based on some of the custom segmentation we ran from the Element 1 tool. And this led to an increase in sales in that specific trade area. So we kind of helped them right size from where they were and where they wanted to be to the things they needed to do to capitalize on the people that they had around them every day.
And that's a great example, and that's not even just on behalf of Coke, but that was on behalf of Coke in partnership with one of your food service retail customers, right? So using your data to help identify new opportunities for that partner.
Absolutely. And in that vein, we have another valuable food service partner of ours that has some very successful evergreen campaigns for its delivery business. And they were trying to understand where they could find incremental sales, additional orders. So again, logical train of thought, thoughtful approach from their end. And to prove out what we could do with some light data sharing, we showcased how much we already knew about their business by modeling out untapped audiences, again, using the Element 1 tool. So we created several consumer groups that could be lit up within any co-marketing campaign, including things like streaming TV bingers, right? So At the time when we were running a lot of this kind of work, House of Cards was still on the air. And so we were joking around like, hey, the next season of that coming out, right? You're going to have people who are going to binge watch the entire series in a night on a day on like a Saturday or a Sunday. This is a great opportunity to talk to someone around a relevant social occasion, something people are already thinking about getting people together for your delivery business. Obviously, that show's no longer around, and that's sad.
All day, you need your dinner delivered.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The other one that we kind of teed up for them that we thought was really interesting was a non-loyal heavy category buyer, which had a much better name when we could just transparently talk about who that customer was, right? But again, that being you have a consumer who toggles between a few different options. How do you stay top of mind and capture more share of the wallet? Again, all of these things focusing on incrementality and none of them requiring anything of a significant level of depth from technology or capability. It was just making the most of what existed and how we brought it to life together.
That's great.
Then, so I was going to say, one thing that we haven't done, but I'm super bullish on doing, is actually using E1's geo-analysis of consumer groups to inform digital out-of-home co-marketing, right? So the idea of identifying consumers in a given need state, driving them to a retailer within that same area, and tracking if the ID is exposed across a specific geofence, that's really awesome stuff. And when you talk about being able to limit the number of third parties involved in that and to have a lot of deterministic information passed between us and a partner to help facilitate that, that's even more amazing, right? You're reducing a lot of, we think this worked, it probably worked, hypothetically it worked, and knowing a lot more about what's causing someone to do something.
So let's talk about that a little more. You've raised some interesting use cases that talked about, different kinds of opportunities for incrementality. You talked about messaging. You talked about using geo for, a specific channel and digital out of home. But what about looking at the whole, sort of customer journey? How do you use data to inform that customer journey mapping, and what does that do in terms of your decision making?
Right. So I said it before, I'll say it again. We have a portfolio of beverages, and we know that different need states determine what a consumer wants to drink in general, right? There's no one drink for everybody, and there's a lot of opportunity to make sure that whatever it is someone prefers, we are teeing that up. So we put a lot of work in to link all of our media exposure data, so the display buys, the mobile buys, what we're doing from a promotional CRM standpoint, et cetera. Across all of our brand and co-marketing work, again, we bring all of that together to paint a picture about which consumer groups are getting what messages, about which beverage or beverages, the format, right? I talked about pack type before, and where that build up access that beverage. If we're talking about a co-marketing effort between us and, I don't know, say 7-Eleven, right? So it's important for us to stitch all of that together so we are thoughtful about the amount of content someone is seeing, if it really is relevant for them, if we're bringing it to light in a way that matters to them based off what we know about how they buy, when they buy, why they buy, right? So in tandem, we want to ensure we're creating smart audiences predicated off of our first-party data and the wealth of attributes we have in E1, so we can link all of our research, the activation of each campaign. No linkages, nothing that creates a great PDF that every supplier we work with returns to us as a different way of trying to get back to that message, but a true push data strategy. And again, it also helps us really find a size of the prize for that opportunity, that consumer count, right, that we curate and then see how that's delivered across our different partnerships. And then all of it coming together, the consumer segmentation, the targeting, the collection of media exposures, so we know who we're talking to, when we're talking to them, why we're talking to them, so that we can be thoughtful from a campaign optimization standpoint about every way we sequence those interactions.
And when you talk about stitching that data together so that you can understand, the full scale, what about other kinds of data sources? How do you do that with social or mobile? Are you able to bring those in so that you've got a really, a real sort of 360 understanding of people and you're not double and triple counting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when it comes to mobile data specifically, right, of course we're bringing that in. We need to be bringing that in, right? So if you're utilizing a technology platform like a DMP simply to manage display campaigns, you're not doing your job, right? Like, you need to be thinking about all the ways in which you are putting a message in front of a consumer and understanding how those devices, who are just proxies for that consumer, like what they're receiving, when they're receiving it, what formats are receiving engagement, right? You need to understand that holistic story, because if you're thinking about someone's occasions, when someone's at a quick service restaurant, a food service partner, when they're out to eat, regardless of the place, more than likely not on their laptop. Possible, but most likely if they're going to be on the internet, they're on their phone, right? If they're at home, they're much more likely to maybe be on a tablet or a desktop, right? So when you think about the nature of you as a person using a device and when you use those devices most often, there is a easy way to adapt that to when you are targeting someone with that given piece of creative against that audience around all those different places. Again, you want to make sure all that work you did to inform which consumer should get that relevant message hits that right device at a time where it can help make an impact on what they're doing.
And Chris, when you talk about it, you make it sound easy, but this is complicated stuff. How do you socialize throughout the company all of these different things that the marketers need to be aware of, and how do you help provide value to them through these different sorts of approaches and tool sets?
Yeah, so I'll start off on the brand side, right? So I know when you talk about it in totality, it seems like there's dozens and dozens and dozens of steps. It's really not that bad. And when you think about the actual planning to activation, the measurement, and the plan again, that sort of sequence process, you're really taking a piece of that and layering it into a given time period, right? So our brand efforts shouldn't have to be unique things. It shouldn't be something where I'm kicking a door in and being like, look at this deck, look what we did, right? The work that we're doing, when we do it well, that's funneling organically into every step of our planning and activation process. We're proving out the value of what's being done, and it's being able to tell that given piece of the story relative to the phase you're in, right? So the consumer segmentation piece really comes into play in the planning process. How you're applying those targets, you're in the RFP process, you're selecting your vendors. As you're live, you're starting to think about engagement. After the fact, during the fact, you're thinking about measurement, right? And there's a component of the story you're bringing forth in all the existing meetings, all the existing routines, so that you don't actually have to do something that drastically different. Where we do have to think very carefully about how we socialize and ensuring that everybody's on the same page of what we can do is more so on our customer partner side, because obviously retail channels, convenience retail, drug, mass, supermarket, right? All those have a lot of similarities, but some very big differences. Food service, sit-down restaurant, like again, all movie theaters, theme parks, all these things have differences and why a consumer is there and when. And they all have different goals, right? If a restaurant is famous for chicken, they might think about pairing a different beverage than if it's famous for pizza. So on those efforts, it's very custom. It's very much about what the core thing we want to drive that entity is. And that is where you actually have to take the time to get in front of every stakeholder that you can and ensure that they see what's being done and why. And that's really something you do in hopefully that year one phase, right? The more that you prove what you're doing works and the more value you can bring to the table, the more people are willing to trust. People are willing to trust, You can just focus on the doing of the work rather than the selling of the work.
That makes a lot of sense. So you've walked us through a bunch of different things, and it sounds like Coke is pretty advanced in terms of how you're thinking about data, how you're thinking about segmentation, how you're thinking about scaling what you know about customers, whether it's through your own expertise, whether it's through the partnership kinds of data, and then how you're shepherding not just messages, but also strategy and packages and all of the different ways that you can support and grow your business. I'm wondering, you're doing so much today. What aren't you doing that you wish you were, or that you wish you could?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm really interested in getting more of is a different data type out of our freestyle machines than we do today, right? So freestyle, if you never used it, very common in a lot of restaurants, food service partners. Every beverage you can possibly imagine that we serve, you press a button, you get it, you can mix and match, create custom flavors. The information we get and how people interact with that machine has informed flavor variants, brand new products, right? There's a lot of great things that have come from it already. Beyond that, these things they're supercomputers, right? They're passing all this data back and forth, but we've never really thought how to work with one of those suppliers, right? Say like a Wendy's or a McDonald's or a Burger King or an Arby's, to say, how can we turn this into a proximity measurement device, right? So we already have a consumer coming in, declaring a purchase, playing with the information, and just imagine what we could do if we actually knew that this person 100% saw that come in for this limited time offer, come in and get the buy one, get one, come in and try this different new product that we have at the store, right? And there's so many, and they're all over the place. And again, if we just had an ability to understand more about who was actually pouring versus just what they were pouring, I mean, I could spend a whole other hour talking about possibilities and things we could accomplish from a targeting or measurement standpoint. Be 100% worth the time. Just take a lot of conversation on dev work and what a partner is comfortable doing, right?
Yeah. So right now you've got a really great supercomputer machine that helps you understand the what and maybe even, how much or to what degree. But if you could get that down to the who, to the individual, that would be really exciting. So yeah, what advice do you have for our friends on the phone about how to get started? Because I'm sure that there is a lot that you've shared that's getting people excited about what they might want to do or where they could go. How should they get started?
Yeah. So if you know nothing about this space, you're just getting into it, my biggest piece of advice, don't get caught up in jargon and shut down, right? Every industry, every company has their own set of acronyms and tools and whatever else. It just takes a little bit of time to understand what everything means to where you can comprehend what people are talking about, right? So that's step one. Don't get overwhelmed. Push through. You'll get it. It's really not that hard. You've learned this stuff before in your life. You can learn it again. When it comes to the application of things, test and learn with whatever data your organization has, regardless of how much or how little it is, right? So learning how to be thoughtful in developing your segmentation, the actual use of that in targeting, how to optimize off consumer signal, and what sort of measurement you can enable with this, or you aspire to enable with this kind of work. That helps you truly know who your consumers are, what they respond to, and everything else about the right tech stack, the right everything else, what you need, what you can build in the house, what you got to borrow, all that kind of stuff. You can worry about that down the line, right? Just take what you have, take what's proprietary to you, what is the closest thing you have to a consumer walking into your headquarters and telling you exactly what they think, no holds barred, and develop your first party strategy as a foundation for your overall data strategy. You have to start there. If you start outside of your organization, you're going to lose track against what your actual value proposition is.
Yeah, we always used to say there ain't no party like a first party.
I like that. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so I wanna go to questions soon, but before we do that, I want to ask you sort of one lucky strike extra question, Chris, and this is because you are, amongst the realm of people that we work with and amongst the realm of people that I know, you're always one of the sort of most thoughtful prognosticators of what's to come. So before we take questions from the group, I would love to know your thoughts about what technologies are out there that you think are actually going to be game-changing, and what do you think is just hype that we should all just ignore?
Okay, so I love this question. And my honest thoughts are, in the short term, blockchain is total shenanigans for advertising. Long term, it really will be a game changer. So when you think about what people are saying blockchain is supposed to do, right? It's this idea of this distributed ledger where everybody's verifying that a real consumer saw this, that someone did take this action, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's Google sharing that. That's Facebook sharing that. That's the small independent player sharing that. That's everybody opening up. And be realistic, if you follow this industry at all, the exact opposite is happening right now, right? So when I get these random emails in my inbox about someone being like, we deliver coupons to people through an app, and it's blockchain and it's like in bold and italicized, right? Like maybe it is delivered through a blockchain mechanism, but what is the difference from what that is and how that comes to life versus what I do today? You dig in, it basically doesn't exist. But again, when you think about the consolidation that is happening in this space, all the work being done to combat things like fraud and just the way in which you do this rapid proliferation of devices, right? So it just feels like the idea of what the ledger is supposed to be will eventually come into being. You might get a lot of these not mean walled gardens that are out there, right? Maybe some of the companies that have all just recently merged together agreeing to do something like this to fight the duopoly, potentially triopoly, however you say that, depending on what Amazon wants to do. But again, I think at the end of the day, that's going to come to fruition.
I think we're a quadopoly this morning.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so there's one more question that I'm going to ask before we go to questions from the audience, because I think they're still coming in. But so let's do this, Chris. I'm going to give you endless resources and talent and all of the money that you could possibly need. What is the one pain point you would solve with everything that you have in the world with unlimited resources to throw at it?
Yeah. So I would buy up every fraud, viewability, and brand safety solution in existence globally. I would break them down to the best parts of each of their offering. I'd splice them together, and then I'd take that output and I'd put it into every media platform, and I'd have it be able something that can measure every ad format. It would be a universal system of measure. It would be like Nielsen is for TV ratings, right? It would just, how wonderful would that be, to where those numbers coming back to you were things that nobody could poke a hole at, and you could take a step away from, am I using the right vendor to manage this subsection of the fraud, viewability, brand safety conundrum, and focus on, is the work driving an action that I want? Is it relevant for my consumer, et cetera, et cetera?
All right, that's a pretty good aspiration. I'm in with you on that. All right, let's see if we've got any questions coming in from the audience.
All right, looks like we have a few questions coming in. The first question looks like it's coming in from Brian, and it's actually going to be about how are you packaging up the customer insights that are being generated to the rest of your organization? It seems like it's for Chris.
Yeah, so in a perfect world, everybody would like Excel as much as I do and numbers as much as I do. That's not the case. So the curse of any good analyst is that you also have to care about writing and how you tell a story, and you have to take that information and you have to weave that usually into a deck. Is it ideal? Is it the way I want to spend all of my time? Not necessarily, but I think once you get a good routine with your stakeholders and you learn truly what they care about and the best things you can bring to them, 80% of your content and the format's all the same. You start cranking stuff out and you focus on more high value things.
Great, thank you. Next question coming in from the lines. How do you connect the creative development of content so you know the right message is getting out to the consumers you have worked so hard to identify?
Yeah, so segmentation and information about what those groups of consumers care about and why, that's not something that you should start when it's time to RFP a media vendor, right? That's something that should be part of your long-range business plan, right? So when you're thinking about whether or not someone would care about a mini can more than a 12-pack, the nuances between why someone would care, that is something your creative agency should care about and get just as easily and in the same manner that your media agency, preferred vendor, internal media team, whatever it is, gets. I'm not trying to make it sound overly simple, right? Because timelines can be stressful, right? But like that's literally it. If you're doing the work to understand who you should be reaching, you got to be sharing that with your creative people, with your media people, with all of your stakeholders.
And all of them working from the same page, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great, another question coming in. So how are you envisioning massive personalization in a potentially cookieless world? Is there any success case or guidance that you can provide?
Yeah, so great question. This is where you got to start relying on some best-in-class external partnerships, right? So we're not a massive D2C business, so we can't just assume our CRM database will tell us everything, help us inform who everyone is. This is where you work with a partner like a Neustar, and there are certain media vendors that we work with who have great identity solutions that complement this. I'm gonna plug Neustar for a minute, pretend I work there. Right? So they sit on top of consumer identity for the full U.S. Right, and so for me as a North American marketer, particularly U.S. marketer, that's what I care about. They understand device IDs, they understand set-top boxes, cookies that do exist, other fractional identifiers and things that you pull in, right? So even if the browser cookie dies, their ability to link something to someone does not disappear. And that continuity and the fact that I don't have to worry about that because I know what I'm getting from them and I can focus on utilizing that to inform my segmentation and my measurement, that gives me a heck of a lot of comfort. And if you can't say the same about your technology vendor you're working with, you should pick up the phone and call someone from Neustar today.
Thank you. We'd be happy to take that call.
Just a couple more questions here. So how often are you updating your segments, and how quickly can your organization react to changes in those consumer targeting strategies?
So also a fantastic question. It somewhat depends, and I know everybody's favorite answer is when someone starts, which depends because people think it's immediate, like 30 cop-outs, and I promise I'm not doing that. What I mean is, what is the foundation of my segment? Is it something where I do have pretty rich first-party data in, and it's from a type of engagement that is sort of this pulsating or nearly always on type of direct-to-consumer play? Because if it's that, I'm probably getting signals weekly, bi-weekly, right, from those exact same people, and I can think about how I toggle based off what I see shift over time. Am I using survey data? Am I using aggregated data, inference models, right? If you start going down that route, whether it's true third-party data or survey assets that you're licensing, something like that, or things you're conducting, it kind of depends on the frequency in which you update those things or can get updated versions of those things. So it can be very quick. It can be something that you bake into your optimization routine, right? I'm very fond of programmatic media because I grew up in it. You got daily optimizations you do. If you're getting daily signals, you can tweak your segmentation. If you are running more static kind of evergreen type content, maybe an environment that doesn't have as many signals or as much variability in how you can tweak, you're probably monthly, bi-weekly. It kind of just, again, depends on the nature of what it is that you're buying.
Great, thank you. And there's actually a follow-up question to that. So as far as the tweaking of the segmentation and the analysis of those audiences and the data coming in from all the different channels, is that a platform that you're using within the Neustar tool? Is that something you have access to outside of it? Can you talk a little bit about how you're pulling those levers and what access you actually have to that data?
Yeah, so I'll give you general information without just like putting my tech stack out there completely. We do use a number of Neustar services. We onboard our first party data into Neustar, right? We see our consumer exposure data in Neustar. I talked about that earlier. So there is a central hub of what we're doing across digitally connected media and our CRM system there. And we can utilize the tools in those platforms to do a lot of intricate and interesting things. And then, think about just what's out there, right? You partner up with Facebook, right? Everybody knows what Facebook is like. So if you're a marketer, you've probably bought something in Facebook, they have a ton of data. So again, is it a function of you feel confident that what you have is the bulk of what you need to create that target, or is it a seed that lets you go into a data-rich environment like a Facebook and model out from it? So we use media tools, media vendors that are out there to augment what we have when we want it just to inform, and where we have breadth and depth, we use our in-house tools to kind of curate the thing that is pushed out into the ecosystem.
Great, thank you. I have two more questions here. So the second to last question, calling back to some of the visualizations we saw earlier of the DMA heat mapping. So how can you relate the content that we talked about today, the subject matter we talked about today, to the multicultural space within and among the 2,400 independent supermarkets and the massive inner city consumers, particularly the Hispanic and Latino communities?
Wonderful question. And I wish I had the deepest, highest quality answer to that. And frankly, I don't, right? So I am like every other person that is out there. I get information to some degree on those consumers. I don't necessarily have tons and tons and tons of it. And mass market syndicated data on those consumers isn't exactly the best traditionally. What I would say is, while there are definitely things about those specific consumer groups that might make a particular product in my portfolio more relevant or more interesting from a flavor profile to that consumer, I try to remember that segmentation at the end of the day is literally just that. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is or your cultural background. We all like different things. We all have nuances to our taste buds. Even if you think the African-American consumer is best suited for a given product in your portfolio, guess what? Every African-American is different, and they may or may not like what you're bringing up to the table, right? So I take some comfort in that if I'm thinking more about what facilitates a consumer need, think about hydration. Doesn't matter your cultural background. If you're playing sports or you're working out, you're jogging, you're going to get thirsty. You probably want some water. We got some water for you. You know what I mean? That's how I try to kind of look at that world.
Thank you. And the last question from the audience is, what advice would you give to those CPG organizations that may not have the same type of access to customer data as Coke does?
Like I said, take whatever you have and build your foundation off of it. If you are saying you literally have not a single piece of information on anything you do as a consumer, I would challenge you to go person to person in your organization, ask what they do, ask how they talk to customers, to partners, how they run promotions or sweepstakes, how they run surveys, because most companies are doing all of that, maybe one of those things particularly to a level of depth greater than another. All of those things generate data. And when I've had just fun conversations at conferences or friends that have shipped to different companies, and we're just, hashing things out, seeing what they see, you almost always uncover something you didn't know exists once you go talking to your organization. Coke is no exception. In our quest to talk about first-party data and being consumer first, I can't tell you the number of things that I've stumbled upon that most people in my org didn't know existed, right? Part of that's because we're a giant company, but part of it is just because everybody's caught up in their day-to-day. That something exists. Go find it. There's more than you think.
That is great advice, Chris. It looks like I think we're just about out of time. Lauren, are there any final instructions for our participants?
Yes, I would just like to thank you, Julie and Chris, for such a great presentation. It was really great. And everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, yes, we are out of time for today. But just a reminder, you will receive an email with a link to review the recording, as well as contact details to request the slides. Please feel free to reach out if you also would like to follow up with any additional questions. So as a side note, if you want to hear more about this topic or find out about Momentum's live events, please contact me directly at laurenb@momentumevents.com or visit us online at www.momentumevents.com. So Julie, Chris, I'll hand it back to you in case you have any final farewells.
No, I think thank you so much to everybody for dialing in. Thank you to Chris for being such an excellent presenter here. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of it, and we appreciated everybody's time. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.